The Great Hall of the Galactic Directorate was a monument to 10,000 years of unchanging order. Its laws were ancient, its power absolute, its members, the architects of peace across a million stars. When a young, disruptive species threatened their perfect stability, the solution was simple: a quiet vote, a peaceful separation. But what if the troublemakers were the only thing holding it all together? What if the foundation of the galaxy wasn't the law of the old, but the ingenuity of the new? And what is an empire to do when it realizes it has willingly, arrogantly amputated its own soul? They allowed humans to leave quietly. No war, no anger, only remorse. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe and like the video. It helps us reach new worlds. All right, let's begin the story. The Great Hall of the Galactic Directorate on Ethel Prime stretched across 3 kilometers of polished, light-infused crystal. It was a place of immense, suffocating grandeur, designed to awe lesser species into compliance. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds sat in their designated sections, breathing different atmospheres through personal, silent life support systems. The Lumina, ethereal beings of pure energy, floated placidly in their shimmering containment tanks. The Geodes, rock-like sentients from the galactic core, sat motionless on platforms heated to the precise temperature of their homeworld's mantle. The insectoid Cthar buzzed quietly in their hive clusters, their collective thoughts a low, constant thrum. At the center of it all, the High Council's platform rose like a mountain of silver metal, a throne for the 12 species who represented the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had ruled for 10,000 years. They had crushed rebellions, uplifted primitives, and enforced a rigid, unyielding peace through careful hierarchy and strict, unchanging order. Today felt like any other session. Trade disputes in the Cygnus Arm, territorial agreements near the Veiled Nebula, resource allocation for the next standard century. The usual, glacial business of governing a galaxy with over 2 million inhabited worlds. High Executor Valerius, a tall, gaunt being with skin the color of twilight and 4 preternaturally long arms, called the session to order. His voice echoed through translation devices in thousands of languages, a sound of pure, dispassionate authority. The Directorate recognizes the human delegation, he announced. Ambassador Kenji Tanaka walked to the speaking platform. He was small compared to most beings in the hall, a fleeting form of flesh and bone in a chamber of stone, energy, and ancient chitin. He wore a simple, dark blue uniform that marked him as a representative of Earth and its 17 colonies. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and he carried a single, slim datapad. He looked tired. The humans had been part of galactic society for only 200 years. A blink of an eye. They were considered young, inexperienced, and, by most of the High Council, intensely troublesome. They asked too many questions. They challenged traditions that had worked for millennia. They proposed radical, disruptive ideas about democracy and individual rights that made the ancient, hierarchical species profoundly uncomfortable. They were useful, but annoying. Like clever children who had not yet learned their place. Tanaka stood at the podium and activated the translation system. His voice, calm and measured, carried clearly through the vast space. Honored High Executor, members of the Council, and fellow beings of the galaxy, he began. I stand before you today to deliver a final message from the United Terran Federation and all human colonies. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the hall. Thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other perception organs focused on him, a silent, crushing weight of attention. After careful consideration and much internal debate, spanning several years, humanity has made a decision. We have decided to withdraw from the Galactic Directorate and from galactic civilization entirely. A murmur, a ripple of psychic disturbance, ran through the hall. Several beings shifted in their seats. The lumina in their tanks swirled with agitated light. The High Executor raised one of his 4 hands for silence. The gesture was slight, but it carried the weight of 10,000 years of command. The hall fell silent. We are not leaving in a. Inger, Tanaka continued, his voice steady. We hold no grudge against any species or world. This is not a protest. It is not a negotiation tactic. We simply believe it is time for us to find our own path among the stars. Our philosophies have proven, incompatible with the rigid structures of the Directorate. Corvin emissary Kale leaned forward from his platform. The Corvins were an avian species, ancient but not part of the inner circle, known for their keen sight and sharper insight. They had been the humans' closest thing to an ally on the council. Ambassador Tanaka, surely this decision is hasty, Kale said, his translated voice a concerned chirp. If there are grievances, they can be addressed. The channels for debate exist for this very reason. Tanaka offered him a small, sad smile. There are no grievances, emissary. Only an irreconcilable difference in perspective. We wish to grow, to change, to discover. The Directorate wishes to maintain, to preserve, to control. Neither path is wrong, but we can no longer walk yours. We simply wish to pursue our own development without the constraints of galactic law and custom. High Executor Valerius's expression remained neutral, a mask of ancient calm, but many in the hall could sense his relief. The humans had been a constant source of disruption. They proposed new ideas at every session. They formed unauthorized alliances with younger species. They questioned decisions that had been made by beings far older and wiser. Their departure, in his mind, was a clean solution, a necessary amputation of a troublesome limb. "What of your colonies?" asked Counselor Zafara, a being that looked like a cross between a colossal octopus and a banyan tree, its tentacles rustling with curiosity. "Your 17 worlds, your research stations, your trading posts, these are significant assets. All human personnel and civilians will be evacuated within 6 standard months," Tanaka replied without hesitation. "We will leave all infrastructure, power grids, habitats, atmospheric processors, intact and fully operational. A parting gift to whatever species may wish to claim these territories. We ask only for safe passage during our departure." The hall erupted in surprised chatter. This was unprecedented. Many species had expected the humans to demand compensation or to fight for their established territories. Instead, they were simply leaving everything behind. Billions of credits worth of infrastructure, abandoned without a second thought. "You understand the consequences of this action?" Valerius said slowly, his voice laced with a formal, final warning. "Once you leave galactic society, you cannot return. The laws are clear. Any species that withdraws forfeits all rights, all recognition, and all protections under Directorate law. You will be alone." "We understand completely," Tanaka said. "We accept these terms." Emissary Kale tried one last time, his feathers ruffling with genuine distress. "Ambassador, your people have contributed much. Your medical researchers who synthesized the cure for the Gray Blight. Your engineers who stabilized the Cygnus Rift. Your diplomats, you have a gift for finding compromise where others see only conflict. Surely there is a way to resolve this." Tanaka was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, but it carried a profound weight of finality that echoed in the silent hall. "Emissary Kale, we are grateful for your kindness and for your people's friendship. But humanity has learned much during our time here. We have seen how this galaxy is governed. We have seen which voices are heard and which are ignored. We have seen how progress is measured in centuries and how change is treated as a threat." He looked around the hall one last time, at the ancient, unchanging faces of the High Council. "We do not condemn this system. It has brought a kind of peace, a kind of stability, to countless worlds. But it is not our system. It is not in our nature to remain still. We wish to see what we might build on our own, without the weight of 10,000 years of tradition holding us down." The High Executor's relief was now obvious to everyone in the hall. The human problem was solving itself. "Very well," Valerius announced, his voice ringing with finality. "The Directorate accepts humanity's withdrawal from galactic civilization. All human territories are hereby declared open for claim by Directorate member species. Safe passage is granted for all human vessels and personnel during their departure period." The vote was quick and unanimous. Within minutes, it was done. Humanity was officially no longer part of galactic society. As Tanaka walked away from the podium, his steps echoing in the vast chamber, Emissary Kale called out to him. "Ambassador, where will you go?" Tanaka paused at the colossal doors and looked back, a faint, enigmatic smile on his face. "Somewhere we can grow, emissary. Somewhere we can become what we are meant to be." Within days, human ships began departing from every corner of the galaxy. The exodus was a marvel of quiet, cold efficiency. There was no fanfare, no chaos. Research stations were abandoned with all equipment left meticulously documented and cataloged. Colonies were evacuated with careful attention to leaving the infrastructure intact and stable. Trade agreements were honored to the letter, all accounts settled, before being formally terminated. The humans asked for nothing beyond the promised safe passage. They demanded no compensation. They filed no complaints or protests. They simply gathered their people, packed their ships, and left. Most species watched with a mixture of mild curiosity and smug relief. The humans had been useful trading partners and skilled researchers, but they had also been tireless, infuriating troublemakers. Many beings were relieved to see them go. The Lumina delegation celebrated quietly in their tanks. The humans had been pushing for environmental protection laws that would have limited their energy harvesting operations on ocean worlds. The geodes expressed satisfaction through their slow, seismic communication system. Human archaeologists had been asking uncomfortable questions about ancient ruins on their sacred worlds that the geodes preferred to keep buried. Only Emissary Kale seemed troubled by the whole affair. As the last human ship, a colossal colony vessel, disappeared from the sensor screens around Earth, the Corvin found himself wondering what the galaxy had just lost. But the High Executor was already moving on to the next item on the agenda. New territorial claims to process. Trade routes to reassign. The galaxy was a simpler place now, he thought. More orderly. More predictable. The humans were gone. Everything could return to the way it had always been. The Directorate members congratulated themselves on handling a potentially messy situation so smoothly. No war. No anger. No protracted diplomatic crisis. Just a clean, simple separation. As the session ended and beings began to disperse to their respective ships and habitats, none of them could have imagined the slow, creeping chaos that would begin to unravel in the months ahead. The humans were gone, and slowly, painfully, the galaxy would begin to understand what that truly meant. 6 months after the last human ship vanished from galactic space, the first problems began to appear. They were small at first, like hairline fractures in a colossal sheet of glass. It started on the Altarian Chute, a major trade route between the industrial core worlds and the Centauri colonies. Ships began arriving late, or not at all. Cargo containers were damaged. Communication systems failed at critical moments, causing near collisions in the crowded shipping lanes. Counselor Zafara, the tree-like being, brought the issue to the Directorate's attention. The route has been unreliable for 3 weeks now. The being reported, its branches rustling with agitation. We have lost 7 shipments of vital medical supplies. The geode freighter Stone's endurance is lost with all hands. Its last transmission was a complaint about faulty navigation beacons. High Executor Valerius waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. Technical problems happen. The Directorate has stood for 10,000 years. We are not undone by a few faulty beacons. Assign a maintenance crew. But when the geode maintenance crew arrived, they found something unexpected. The navigation system wasn't just a series of beacons. It was an incredibly complex, adaptive network. It used multi-vector calculus and predictive modeling to constantly adjust for stellar drift, gravitational anomalies, and even traffic density. The core programming was written in dozens of languages, many of which were archaic or no longer in common use. It was a patchwork masterpiece of layered code. Who designed this system? The geode engineer asked, his rumbling voice filled with awe. The maintenance supervisor, a 6-legged Kthar, checked the central records. His mandibles clicked in surprise. According to this, the system was originally designed by the First Empire, but it was completely overhauled and has been updated and maintained by human technicians for the past 40 years. They tried to repair it using standard Directorate protocols. It was like trying to fix a quantum computer with a hammer. The route worked for a few days, then failed again, more catastrophically this time. Ships began taking longer, more dangerous paths around the damaged section, adding weeks to their journeys and exposing them to pirate-infested regions. Similar problems began to appear throughout the galaxy. On Kepler Station, a major research facility housing thousands of the galaxy's best minds, the complex, multi-species atmospheric processors began malfunctioning. The air became thin and stale in some sections, dangerously rich in inert gases in others. Scientists complained of headaches, fatigue, and concentration loss. The Lumina technical team, masters of energy systems, investigated for a week. They found that the life support system had been modified over many years with hundreds of small, ingenious improvements that no one had properly documented. The modifications were brilliant, seamlessly integrating Lumina, Geode, and Cthar technologies into a single, hyper-efficient system. But they were also complex, intuitive, and completely alien to the Lumina's rigid engineering philosophy. "We cannot understand the core logic," the lead Lumina engineer bubbled through her translation unit. Her energy formed a frustrated, chaotic swirl. "It's like the system has a ghost. A human ghost. We will have to replace the entire system. It will take months and cost millions of credits." On the agricultural world of Dida's garden, the crops began to fail. The planet's soil, naturally poor, had been made hyperfertile by a special mixture of minerals and custom-engineered biological agents. This treatment, which kept the soil productive despite intensive farming, was a proprietary formula from a human agro-corporation. The formula itself was stored in human databases that had been wiped clean before their departure, as was their legal right. The geode farmers who now managed the planet tried to recreate the treatment using standard methods. The first harvest was poor. The second harvest failed completely. Without the human-developed soil treatment, the planet that fed 1 billion beings across a dozen worlds was slowly turning back into a barren desert. Dr. Eris Thorne, a brilliant Corvin medical researcher and protege of Emissary Kale, faced a different, more terrifying crisis. He was on the Cthar homeworld, trying to contain a new outbreak of the Zephyrian plague, a horrifying disease that was particularly deadly to insectoid species. It caused a rapid necrosis of their chitinous exoskeletons, essentially dissolving them alive. He had been working with a team of human scientists on a cure. The humans, with their chaotic, adaptive biology, had a unique insight into viral evolution. They had made a breakthrough just before the withdrawal. "We were so close," Eris reported to the medical directorate, his voice choked with despair. The human lead, Dr. Evans, she understood how the virus was using quantum tunneling to bypass the host's immune response. She had developed a counteragent. The final trials were scheduled to begin. Now her research is gone. All of it. We have to start over. But they couldn't start over. The plague continued to spread. Without the fast, adaptable human medical ships providing aid and quarantine enforcement on infected worlds, the death toll began to rise exponentially. Emissary Kale watched these reports with a growing, sickening sense of dread. The Corvins, with their keen eyesight, were natural observers. They paid attention to details that other, more powerful species ignored. Now, as he compiled the reports from across the galaxy, he began to see a pattern. The humans had not just participated in galactic society. They had woven themselves into its very foundation, into its bones and its nervous system. They had quietly, thanklessly, improved systems, solved problems, and maintained connections that no one else had even noticed were fraying. He spent weeks in the great archives, pulling up records. Human involvement was everywhere. "Look at this," Kale said to his assistant, a young Corvin named Lyra. He pointed to a historical file. The humans mediated the peace treaty between the crystalline Methuselahs and the gas giants Union. It was a 1,000-year conflict they ended in 6 months. They designed the translation protocols that allow the Cthar hive queens to speak with individualist species. They created the Pan-Galactic Disaster Response Network that coordinates aid across 1,000 light-years. Lyra examined the data, her feathers fluffing in surprise. "I had no idea. Their name is not on any of these treaties or protocols." "Exactly," Kale replied grimly. "They never asked for credit. They never demanded recognition. They just helped. They were the galaxy's quiet fixers." But the other Directorate members remained unconcerned, blinded by 10,000 years of arrogance. When Kale brought his findings to their attention, High Executor Valerius was dismissive. "Growing pains, emissary," Valerius said, his voice laced with patronizing condescension. "Anytime there is a significant societal shift, there are temporary difficulties. Other species will learn to fill these roles. The geodes will develop new farming techniques. The Lumina will build better life support. The Directorate will endure. But what if they cannot?" Kale asked. "What if the humans were doing things that no one else can do? What if their chaotic, adaptive way of thinking was a necessary component of our stable, logical galaxy? Impossible, Counselor Zafara declared. Humans are a young species. Anything they could do, older and wiser species can, by definition, do better. We simply need time. But time was running out. As the months passed, more problems emerged. The Great Library of Andromeda, the repository of all galactic knowledge, began losing data at an alarming rate. The human linguists and xenoarchaeologists had been the only ones maintaining the archives for thousands of extinct languages and civilizations. Without them, vast sections of historical knowledge were becoming inaccessible, turning into meaningless symbols that no one could decipher. Trade disputes that humans had quietly mediated for years began flaring into open conflicts. Without their unique diplomatic services, negotiations stalled and ancient tensions rose to the surface. On the frontier worlds, exploration missions stopped reporting back. The humans had been the primary scouts and first contact specialists for the Directorate. They were better at adapting to new environments and communicating with unknown species than anyone else. Without them, the expansion of galactic knowledge ground to a halt. Dr. Thorne received a report that shook him to his core. The Zephyrian plague had mutated. It had jumped to a new species, the elegant, aquatic anemones of the core worlds. Their biological processes were completely different from the Kthar. But somehow, the disease had adapted. This should not be possible, he told his terrified research team. The genetic leap, a virus cannot naturally evolve this quickly. It's learning. The plague continued to spread, becoming deadlier and smarter with each new outbreak. Emissary Kale compiled all these incidents into a comprehensive, terrifying report. The document grew longer each week. Equipment failures, communication breakdowns, research setbacks, diplomatic crises, exploration halts, medical emergencies. The pattern was undeniable now. Humanity had been far more than just another member species. They had been the connective tissue, the nervous system, the quiet, tireless immune response that held the ancient, sclerotic body of galactic civilization together. They had filled the gaps, smoothed the frictions, and solved the problems that other species could not, or would not, even see. But when he presented his findings to the Directorate again, the response was the same. Temporary problems. Growing pains. Other species will adapt. High Executor Valerius grew openly irritated with Kale's persistent warnings. Emissary, your fondness for the humans is noted, but they are gone. We must focus on moving forward, not looking backward at a species that chose to abandon its duties. But what if we cannot move forward without them? Kale asked, his voice a desperate plea. Then we were never as strong as we believed, the High Executor replied coldly. And that would be our weakness, not their fault. As the first human absence drew to a close, Emissary Kale sat in his private chambers, reviewing the latest catastrophic reports. Communication networks failing, trade routes collapsing, research projects abandoned, conflicts escalating, plague spreading. The galaxy was slowly, quietly, falling apart, and no one in power wanted to admit it.